Awesome! So you guys have finally captured the insane importance of smiling and being positive. It just changes everything when all you do is smile. So now that you know what to do, let's sort of transition into like what to not do. So we're gonna sort of go over to the computer right now, and we're gonna look at what, like, if you do this, you're gonna be sort of headed towards trouble. This is a bad place to be. So there was this thing in 1898 where a tragedy happened in Rockland County, New York. See, what happened is a child died, and as these kids, the parents were preparing for his funeral. It was a very, very sad event. Everyone was sad. This guy went out to the barn to hitch up the horse. And, I don't know if you guys know this, but like, if you come up behind a horse, and you kind of like come right sort of in their blind spot, like, they will like kick you like really, really, really hard. And like, it's kind of messed up. You see some horses, they have like red ribbons tied on them. And that means they're kickers, they're like big kickers, and so like if you're behind them, like they will kick you, like they'll just their leg will swoosh back, and they will like kick really, really hard. And so this guy, he goes to take care of the horse, and this horse hadn't been exercised for days, and as she was led through the watering trough, he wheeled playfully, and all of a sudden, this horse kicked both of his heels high in the air, and killed this guy. He hit him right in the face and like literally killed him. Because you got to understand, this is literally thousands and thousands of pounds of force just going straight into his head, and he died. It was terrible. And he had 2 funerals that week. Why? Because, well, he didn't really see things from the perspective of the horse, and he didn't understand the horse's natural instinct. But kind of more importantly, as we transition into what actually happened, like this guy, he left behind a widow, he left behind 3 boys. And these 3 boys with their life insurance money didn't really have much to work with. So the oldest boy was 10, and he went to work in a brickworking yard. He would wheel and pour and mold and turn the yard. I mean, he did some hard work. As the sun beat down on him every single day, he would be sitting here constantly making these bricks over and over and over and over again, because he had work to do, and he never really got a chance to have a lot of education. But with his natural geniality, he had a flair for making people like him. And so because he was able to smile, because he was able to connect with people, and he was able to make like intimate relationships and connections in these big social groups, he went into politics, right? And as the years went by, he developed an uncanny ability for the most important thing on the planet: remembering people's names. Because remember, like, names are key. Like, people love themselves more than anything else, and their name is the most important word on the planet to them. This kid, who had never seen the inside of a high school, before he was 46, had 4 years of college with degrees, and he became the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, became the Postmaster General of the United States. His name was Jim Farley. And Dale Carnegie, he met Jim, and he asked him the secret of his success, and he said hard work. And of course Dale goes like, don't be funny, of course hard work, but like, what really, really was it? And he sits down, and he replies, hey, he says, I understand you can tell the names of 10,000 people. You can tell 10,000 people by their first name. And he says, 10,000? No, that's insane, that's not real, I can call 50,000 people by their first names. How insane is that? He can remember 50,000 people's names. And that's what led him to have success in politics. This is the exact ability that helped Mr. Farley put FDR in the White House when he managed his campaign in 1932. Literally, check this out, okay? He's got like 50, like imagine having like a power base, right? Of people that connect with you, and of your family, and of your friends, and people that are close to you, people that care about you. Now imagine that power base being 50,000 people who you can call by name. Dude, that's insane. Oh my gosh, right? And so as he's running for office, he traveled along as a salesman for a very, very long time. And during those years, as he held offices in town, he built a system for remembering people's names. And in the beginning, it was very, very simple. It was the name system, okay? And what he did was very, very, very fundamental to remembering these guys' names. Whenever he met someone new, he could figure out their complete name. This is key, right? Because so often people forget their people's names. But in reality, if you just get someone's complete name, then you just forget their last name and you call them by their first name. Works better. Works a lot better because you have more to stick to in your head. more Velcro. Like if you have like Velcro, right, you got like the sticky part, which is like the rough part, and then you have like the soft padded part. And so you just need to have more hooks, more Velcro hooks on that hard part to whip into your mind, which is that soft part. And if you have more Velcro hooks by having a complete name, it's going to stick in your mind better. Even if you only remember the first name, you're gonna stick in the mind better because it's a bigger piece of Velcro that's metaphorically sticking to your brain. So that's exactly what he did. He'd call people by their complete name. Then what he would do is he would grow and grow and grow the amount of information he had on them. So we'd figure out facts about their family, facts about their business. Anything you figure out about maybe their like political opinions, okay? Everything he could have. He mix all these facts together and make a complete and total picture of this person. And the next time he met that person, even if it was a year later, he was able to shake hands, talk about their family, talk about sports, whatever they love, whatever they're passionate about, and ask about, whatever they wanted to get done. No matter what, he always knew what was going on. And because of that, because of this simple system he developed, being genuinely interested in others and learning a lot about them and then remembering a lot about them, sometimes by writing it down, more often by like ingraining it in his mind, guess what? He became super freaking popular and developed a massive, 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 massive following of 50,000 people. And those people were fans, raving fans of his, right? So for months before Roosevelt's campaign for president began, Jim Farley wrote hundreds of letters per day to everybody all over the western and northern states. And he hopped onto trains, and in 19 days he covered 20 states. And he went over 12,000 miles traveling by buggy, train, automobile, and boat just to meet people. The most important resource he could ever have asked for. He would drop into town, meet his people at lunch, or for breakfast, or tea, or dinner, give them a heart-to-heart talk. And then he would dash off again to another leg of his journey. He would give them a personal visit, which is so powerful. He would get in front of them, and as soon as he arrived back home, he would write to one person in each town he visited, asking for a list of all the guests he had talked to. And the final list contained thousands and thousands and thousands of names. Yet each person on that list was paid the subtle flattery of getting a personal letter from James Farley. The letters always began with Dear Bill or Dear Jane, and they always were signed Jim, because he discovered early in life that the average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all other names on earth put together. People care about themselves. So he's sending out all these letters. These people are feeling ridiculously important because they care about themselves and their names more than anybody else. And by having this personal touch, it makes them feel significant, like somebody cares about their name. You cannot misspell it, right? You always have, it's just a very subtle and a very effective compliment by remembering people's names. And if you place yourself, you just want to make sure you get it right. Like you don't want to misspell it. Like you get names right, and you'll put yourself at a huge advantage. It's huge. One time, Carnegie, he was organizing a public speaking course in Paris, and he sent letters to all the American residents in the city, but they were in French, right? So the French typists didn't really know about American names, and so they misspelled a lot of these English names, and like literally he would get maybe like a 1 or 2 or 5% response rate from these direct mail pieces and trying to recruit people to come to the seminars. But what was crazy is because these guys, they would spell the names wrong. Literally, he had tons and tons and tons of people. One of them was the manager of a huge bank in Paris who wrote a pissed off rebuke because his name had been misspelled. Like people care about names, about their names, more than anything else. And so like if you spell it wrong or you pronounce it wrong, like it's messed up, right? So you want to make sure that you get it right. You go through the process, you put in the time, the energy to get it right and get their name. Because sometimes, it's tough to remember a name, especially if it's hard to pronounce. Rather than try to learn it, like make sure that you clarify with the other person and understand exactly how to say the name. And freaking learn it. Carnegie, he has this insane example here where he talks about this client, or this student he was teaching, and he had a client for some time whose name was Nicodemus Papadopoulos, and most people just called him Nick, but he told him this. He made a special effort to say his name over several times again to himself before he gave him a call. And when he greeted him by his full name, "Good afternoon, Mr. Nicodemus Papadopoulos," he was shocked. For what seemed like several minutes, there was no reply from him at all. Finally, he said, with tears rolling down his cheeks, "Mr. Levi, in all the 15 years I have been in this country, nobody has ever made the effort to call me by my proper name." That's how powerful this was. This guy is literally sitting there crying because nobody calls him by his name. And he feels so important, so significant, so highly valued because this one person took the time, freaking 2 minutes it takes to learn how to say his name and said his name to him. Changed his life. Same thing, Andrew Carnegie. Why does Andrew Carnegie so successful? Obviously, Steel King, right? But he didn't know a whole lot about steel. What did he do? He just kind of surrounded himself with a mastermind of individuals who understood the process, right? And so as he goes through this process, what's really interesting is what made this mastermind a success. How did he actually create this powerful social group? I'll tell you guys a little bit of a secret. He didn't have hundreds of people working for him who knew more about steel than he did because he was like super influential. He did it because he knew how to handle people. And as soon as he was able to handle people, he was able to build up this mastermind of everyone that wanted to support him. Showed a flair for organization, a genius for leadership. By the time he was 10, he discovered the astounding importance people placed on their own name. It's just this crazy, crazy example. And so here's what he did. He was like this 10-year-old kid. He's sitting outside, and he wanted a lot of his friends to come in and help him. Because he got a rabbit, and he got a mother rabbit, and as he gets this rabbit as a little kid, he's got this nice rabbit, and the rabbit has like a bunch of little bunny kids, right? And he has nothing to feed them, and so he really his mom's like, "Hey, you gotta feed the bunnies since you got your rabbit, dude." And he's like, "Oh crap, dude, that's a lot of work. I don't really want to go out there and feed this bunny. That's like, I don't know, man." He's just chilling out, doing his own thing. He's a 10-year-old kid, right? So he gets all of his friends together, and he says, "Hey guys, my rabbit, he just had a lot of bunnies, and I'll tell you what, if you guys come and you pull enough clovers and dandelions to feed the rabbits, then I will name the bunnies in your honor." And dude, these guys went berserk. Why? Because people care about their names more than anything else on the planet. You see people, they donate literally hundreds of millions of dollars to educational institutes, to like stadiums, to wherever. They'll pay out the rear end just to get their name on something. Because people care about their names, their significance, the impact in their life. It all comes from their ability to stand out and feel important. And these kids, they run all over the place and get so much food for these bunnies and for these rabbits because they want to have the bunnies named in their honor. The plan, it works like magic. And these kids did exactly what he wanted because he gave them a way to perpetuate their names. People like their name. Years later, he made millions by using the same psychology in business when he wanted to sell rails to the Pennsylvania Railroad. So at the time, J. Edgar Thomas, okay, he was the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. And so Carnegie, he built a huge steel mill in Pittsburgh, and he called the huge steel mill in Pittsburgh the Edgar Thomas Steelworks. Now, here's a quick question. See if you can figure out the answer, okay? When the Pennsylvania Railroad, led by J. Edgar Thomas, needed to buy steel rails, who do you think he bought them from? From Sears, from Roebuck? No. BS. He bought them from the guy who literally invested tons and tons and tons of money to open up this massive manufacturing plant and named the whole thing after the freaking president. Like he's gonna buy from the guy who literally put his name on the factory. So, what you can learn from this? Well, look, here's the thing. This guy, Carnegie, he could have easily made this, the Andrew Carnegie is the best person ever on the planet, steel works, steel mill. And he could have boosted up his ego and he could have boosted up his personality in the short term, but in the long term, it would have cost him, all this business with the Pennsylvania Railroad. But he made the more intelligent decision. And he decided he was going to take the short-term pain of, calling it by somebody else's name. And he was going to sacrifice his own ego for the benefit of the company. And he was going to make tons and tons and tons of money by selling the steel to someone who was more important, like that was actually his client, by naming it after them and taking the hit and giving them that benefit at the beginning, so that in the long term they got much more business from that partnership, right? So it's huge. And it was just such a simple process. Like, he didn't have to negotiate, he didn't have to go into like some new situation or some new tactics or cut his prices. All he had to do was name the manufacturing plant, the name of the guy he wanted to sell it to, and it works like an instant magic, because people care about their names more than anything else. The Central Transportation Company, which Andrew Carnegie controlled, was fighting with the company that Pullman owned. And both were struggling in the sleeping car business of the Union Pacific Railroad. They were bucking each other, slashing prices, and destroying all chances of profit. And so Carnegie and Pullman, they come together and they realize that they are literally crushing each other's businesses. And the competition is just unfeasible, it's not sustainable. And so Carnegie, he realizes that like he should just take a short-term hit to his ego for a long-term gain in prosperity for his company. So they come together, and Carnegie and Pullman go to New York to see the board of directors at Union Pacific. And meeting one evening in the St. Nicholas Hotel, St. Carnegie said, "Good evening, Mr. Pullman. Aren't we making a couple of fools of ourselves?" And Pullman says, "What do you mean?" And he says what he had on his mind. He says that a merger of their two interests is the best thing that could happen. He pictured in glowing terms the mutual advantage of working together with each other instead of against each other. And Pullman, he listened attentively, but he was not wholly convinced. He was a little bit on the edge. Pullman asks him, "What do you want to name this new company?" And Carnegie replies promptly, because he knows the secret of names and he knows how much people care. He says, "Why, we would call it the Pullman Palace Car Company," of course. He totally removes himself from the name, and he gives all of this significance to Pullman so that he can make the money, because he knows that it's more important for him to have that long-term cash prosperity than it is for him to have the freaking name on the front of the building. Give away praise and sacrifice your ego, and it will change absolutely everything. That's what he did here, is he gave away praise and he sacrificed his ego. Pullman's face brightened up, it exploded. He said, "Come into my room, let's talk it over." And they made industrial history by having this huge corporate merger, solely because he was able to sacrifice his ego and let the name of the new company be the Pullman Car Company. This policy of remembering and honoring names of friends and of business associates was one of the secrets of Andrew Carnegie's leadership, and he was so proud of the fact that he could call many of his factory workers by their first names, and he bolstered that while he was personally in charge, no strike ever disturbed his flaming steel mills. Like, you hear all about these big strikes, but when Carnegie was in charge, there was never a strike. Everyone was always happy. They were always happy because he would address them by their first name and make them feel important. Because if someone's calling you by your first name, it means like you're going to reciprocate, you're going to care about them, and you're going to want them to succeed because they put in the effort to care about you. So do that to everyone you know, right? Like, care about their first name and they will care about you. Always use every chance you have to greet others by the most important word on the planet, which is their name. Interweave it into any conversation possible, because so few people focus on the first name, and instead they just focus on themselves. And as you focus on other people's first names, you're focusing on them, you're giving them importance, you're giving them significance, and you will literally change all of the connections and relationships that you have, and making others feel so much more important than you could ever have on your own, which is just huge and so powerful. Beaton Love, who was the chairman of the Texas Commerce Barshins, believes the bigger a corporation gets, the colder it becomes. And one way to warm it up is to remember people's names. Because no matter how big you get, or no matter how much success you have, if you can just keep remembering people's names, you're always going to have that personal connection with other people. And the executive who can't remember names is the same executive who can't remember a significant part of the business and is operating on quicksand. Because these names represent people, they represent relationships, they represent relationship assets. They're the most valuable thing, because they allow you to get right into someone else's life immediately and create deep rapport and connections with them on a very fast basis. Kieran Keshos of Rancho Palos Verdes, California, was a flight attendant for TWA. She made it a practice to learn the names of as many passengers in her cabin as possible. and use the names when serving them. This resulted in many compliments on her service, and literally it made her clients express both directly to her and the airline, like in letters, that they haven't flown on TWA and this airliner for some time, but they're going to start flying on it from now on. Because what? Because these names, guess what? It made them feel important. It made them feel significant. She says that it makes her feel that your airline has become very personalized. And that is important to her. Because people will literally pay more for the same service if you personalize it and you just give them a feeling of significance by telling them their own name. He offers him $25,000 just if he will call himself Barnum Seeley. Just to perpetuate his name. For many centuries, nobles and magnates supported artists, musicians, and authors. Like, this is the foundation of like the Renaissance, like where people were spending literally millions and millions and millions of dollars on these paintings, equivalent of millions today. They're putting all this money into art and into authors so that their creative works would be dedicated to them, so that their name would live on. Libraries and museums owe their richest collections to people who cannot bear to think that their names might perish from the memory of the race. New York Public Library has its Astor and Lenox connections. The Metropolitan Museum perpetuates the names of Benjamin Altman and J.P. Morgan. And nearly every church is beautified by stainless glass windows commemorating the names of their donors. Many of the buildings on the campus of most universities, they bear the names of the donors who contributed large sums of money. I mean, literally, guys, when people get to the end of their lives, they are afraid of being like pushed away, and they care so much about their names that they will pay hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to perpetuate them and make their name live throughout history after they fall away. So if people are willing to do that, can you imagine how much they would value you coming out and saying, just as a normal person, their name on a day-to-day basis and just telling them their name over and over again? Because literally people, they associate their name with happiness and with development and with like joyfulness and smiling. And so if you smile at somebody and you just tell them their name, look, I don't care if it sounds weird, I don't care if it sounds stupid. Literally, I would read people's name tags. And when I was at Subway, people would read my name tag. And maybe one person out of 1,000 people that walked in that door would call me by my name. And I would look them in the eye after they did it, and I would be like, dude, that's insane. They made me feel so special. So like, even if you don't know somebody, or even if you're just getting lunch somewhere, freaking call people by their names, and it will change the way that they look at you. It will change fundamentally the amount of growth, the amount of development that you have. Everything will shift because people care so much about their names. And if you can just give them that feeling of importance and significance and call them by their name, they'll love you for it. And you'll stand out so much. They'll treat you so much better than everyone else they know and give you such an increased feeling of significance, all because they want to reciprocate you calling them by most important word in the entire language, which to them, of course, is their name. It's huge. It's just massive. So go out there, guys, apply this and absolutely crush it. Call people by their names. And I mean, FDR, literally, like, the foundation for him becoming president, at least before the age of social media, was knowing people's names and the insane power and influence that people's names has over their actions, their mindset, their thoughts, and their perception of you. So, ton of value here, guys. Go out there, crush it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next module.